Good morning, children. This is the second video of chapter 3, human reproduction. The next part, that is female reproductive system. So you already know the parts of female, the organs of female reproductive system, namely a pair of ovaries, a pair of oviduct, uterus, cervix, vagina and external genitalia. So these ovaries, oviduct, uterus, etc., cervix, etc. are located in the pelvic region of female body. And here you can see the female reproductive system, diagrammatic representation of female reproductive system. So a pair of ovaries on both the side of the lower abdomen, it is located, and attached to the uterine wall and fimbriae or the infundibulum of oviduct by a ligament, by the ligaments, that is the attachment, like that it is attached. So a pair of oval shaped ovaries and a pear shaped, inverted pear shaped structure, that is known as the uterus. And here you can see the fallopian tube or oviduct, and the fallopian tube shows three different regions, namely a funnel shaped portion that is known as infundibulum, and a wider part that is known as ampulla, and a narrow region that is towards the nearer, or it is towards the uterus region. That narrow region towards the uterus is known as isthmus. So isthmus, ampulla and infundibulum together form the fallopian tube. And from the infundibulum there are certain finger-like projections. Finger-like projections are formed. These finger-like projections are known as fimbriae. Function of fimbriae is to capture, or when the ovum is released from the ovary, it is captured by the fimbriae and it is entering into the rest part of the fallopian tube. And next to that, the uterus, a hollow pear shaped, inverted pear shaped structure, that is the uterus, and it is uterus wall. It is lined up by a thick wall and a cavity is present. So this thick wall is made up of three layers. An outer layer is known as perimetrium, then myometrium and endometrium. So perimetrium is the outer layer and myometrium is the middle layer. It is thick layer of smooth muscle, and perimetrium is membranous, thin membranous structure. Myometrium is thick layer of smooth muscles, and inner to the myometrium there is the innermost layer that is known as endometrium. It is highly glandular endometrium, and that lines the uterine cavity. So this is the endometrium which is lining up the uterine cavity. So here you can see this is the entire, this part is known as the uterine cavity where the fetus develop. And here the upper region of the uterine wall is known as uterine fundus. This region is known as uterine fundus. And the lower region of the uterine wall, there is a narrow opening. That portion is known as cervix, and the cervix leads into a small canal that is known as cervical canal, which is followed by the opening that is known as vagina, and vagina and cervical canal together form the birth canal in female. Okay, these all are the, so this is the structure. Already we have learned in, some of the things, you know, that is why going very soon. Okay, so you see and understand. So now let us understand the internal structure of ovary. So here we can see this diagram shows the diagrammatic sectional view of the ovary. So ovaries are the primary sex organ which produces which produce female gametes, that is ovum or egg, and number of steroid hormones, proestrogen, estrogen, progesterone, estrogen, etc. are produced from the ovaries. And internally it is lined up by a thin epithelial cell. The lining of the ovary is formed of thin epithelial cell, and the cavity is divided into two distinct regions, an outer cortex and inner medulla. And here the cortical region, cortex of the ovary, contain number of, here you can see many small primary follicle or the developing egg, as well as secondary, tertiary, like that follicle. Follicles are the developing ovum. Ovums are produced from the primary follicle. So here a development of different stages of development of egg or ovum we can see, and here a mature ovum, that is known as Graafian follicle. After maturation, the egg is released from the follicle, and this released egg is known as ovum, and this is captured by the fimbriae of the fallopian tube. And the remaining structure of the Graafian follicle is known as the corpus luteum. So here you can see corpus luteum. In this internal diagram, you have to, whenever it is asked to draw, you have to show the cortex region and medulla region. Medulla region is somewhat empty, whereas the functional units, namely the primary follicles, the secondary, tertiary, Graafian follicle, etc., are present in the cortical region, cortex. You have to show that one. And when it is get matured, it is released from the ovary. That process is known as ovulation. So a release of the egg. So this is the internal structure, asking for drawing, as well as in your practical also we have this structure of the mammalian ovary we have to learn. So the diagram is important. Okay. So rest of the spermatogenesis and oogenesis, that is gametogenesis, we will be continuing with the next video. Okay.